So we are recording. At least I remember to do that.
That's great.
So this is the official welcome to everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Great to have so many of you here with us. Fantastic that so many people signed up for this call, which to me proves that it's a hot topic, I guess. You know, why some three principal practitioners have a flourishing practice. So, my name is Sheila Massand, introductions, and I'm here hosting Dr. Mark Howard, as you all know, since you signed up for the course, but just wanted to make that really clear.
Yeah, make sure they're in the right place.
Exactly. So as we kind of put on the bump for the introduction to the sort of the bump that we wrote for the call, this is in fact a sneak preview of our upcoming luxury retreat called the Flourishing Point in Spain, which is taking place in September. So we will later on, after we've shared lots of information, we will be speaking a little bit about the retreat, letting you all know what's available on that. So that just wanted to set that up for clarity. If you've not got your lines muted, would you please do us a favour just to mute yourself so that we don't get any background noise? Thank you. Appreciate that. So really the schedule, if you want to call it, the program, the very loose schedule of the call, of the webinar, is going to be that I'm going to hold Mark accountable to the points that we promised we would share on this call. Okay, so I will do my utmost to make sure he addresses those points. And then, as I said, later on we'll be sharing about the retreat, and then we'll be asking for your questions. So there'll be plenty of time towards sort of halfway through the call, two-thirds of the way through the call, for you to be asking questions of Mark. But we want to get, I would like Mark to share the information that he's got to share with us first off. So what we're going to be talking about is how sharing just what you know gives impact. How listening is such a valuable skill in guiding what you share, and a long-standing myth that keeps so many practitioners stuck, and that's a really big one. And I just really want to make the point that Mark's been doing this for 33 years, so I think he's got a little bit of experience behind him in terms of what's worked for him anyway and his clients and what's not. I kind of always put that what works for us, that doesn't mean works for everybody, of course. So what I want to do just very briefly is, and excuse me because I'm flicking around my screen just to bring up Mark's very, very brief bio, just so that we know who he is, kind of. You know, Dr. Mark Howard's a true pioneer in bringing this principles-based understanding to a variety of fields, and is one of the most experienced trainers of practitioners in the world, and I think that's a huge point. So Mark Howard has published a paper demonstrating the efficacy of the three principles in treatment. And in 2008, he was awarded the Outstanding Career Service Award by the Santa Clara Association for bringing this principles education to Santa Clara County. So it really is a fantastic opportunity that we've got here to be sharing with Mark. You know, he's a sought-after speaker, trainer, teacher. So I'm thrilled that, you know, I get to spend some time with him and with all of you. And so without further ado, I just kind of want to hand the mic over to you, Mark, and take us away, if you will, in terms of what we've promised for today's webinar.
Sure, and then you could come in with questions as we go along, Sheila. Well, geez, I'm so happy to be here, and really touched by the response of people, because when Sheila and I talked about her wanting a retreat in Spain and my coming over to do that, I really searched my soul and heart to see what I could offer people. And I really am coming from my heartfelt feelings to help people really flourish in their understanding of the principles, but also in being able to sustain a practice And, you know, what's come to me about that is if you can't flourish in your practice of the three principles facilitator, that's one less voice of an insight you've had about the principles that isn't going to be available to help humanity. And so with all of you on the call, I'm so happy to be part of this because you've had some insight or realization, I'm assuming, about this understanding of the principles and finding ways to help you share that in a way that is comfortable and you feel that is impactful and allows you to flourish in that understanding, but also in what you've set out to do, whether it's in the field of body work, coaching, mental health, addictions, whatever it is. Humanity needs the insights you've seen about the principles. Our world needs you. So that's really where my heart is. So I wanted to talk about flourishing in two different ways today. I wanted to talk about it in terms of spiritual and then practical. Like, you know, what are some practical ideas to think about for you to really flourish in your work, just in the work and growing it? But first I wanted to speak to the spiritual flourishing, you know, and the first point for me that has been so valuable is really getting into the sense of teaching what you know. Because you see, you know, that's where I started. The insight and realization I had the first night I heard Sydney Banks. I talked from that. That was my starting point, and it's flourished. My spiritual understanding of the principles and the feeling of living in this understanding has just flourished from that first day. And what I wanted to share about it briefly today about teaching what you know is that when you share what you have seen, you know, whatever it is that you've realized. For me, I realized thought create feeling. But when you share that, what allows you to flourish is that you are in the truth at that point. Whenever you're sharing some of your knowledge of the principles, you're in that energy. You're in the energy of that insight. And rather than trying to share something that's intellectual or some idea that's come to you that you know that you've read about, but when you truly get into the feeling for what you have seen and share that with people, you're in that spiritual energy. So you are no different than any other three principles person when you really share from that place of your insight. And it has impact. It has impact because it isn't so much the words that come to you to share. It's really that people feel where you are when you're sharing. That's what really impacts people. So you know, so that's what I help people really get comfortable with, because you know I was just talking to a three principles practitioner who's just starting out. And he's been listening to all of the other teachers and watching all the videos, you know, and he's saying, man, how could I ever teach like that? Well, you can't. You can't teach like anybody that's out there. That's the good news, because the minute you start to teach from you, you're on the road to flourishing, spiritually flourishing, because the minute you share truly from what you know, you're going to see more. And then, and that's what impacts people. So you're going to share your whatever you've seen your way, and that will grow the rest of your life. That's how we flourish. I mean, just for me as an example, after I had a deep realization after that first night of hearing Sydney Banks, I went back to 7 hours of work the next day, meeting 7 people individually for an hour. Well, by the time I left the office that day, I had more understanding than when I started. So I just wanted to share that piece with you all, that when we flourish spiritually as a three principles facilitator, by sharing what we know and living in that feeling of what we know about the principles, the realizations we've had. And the more you share, the more you will see. Your understanding will deepen. And it is the space you get into when you share that insight. That space you get into, somebody's there moving the screen. That's what has impact for people. Like I was living in that with a new understanding in my clinic, the Department of Psychiatry in this medical center. It had about 20 mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists. And I was just living in my understanding, and I was sharing it with some of the colleagues that I had, just mentioning it here and there and sharing it with my clients. And, you know, the shift in me had such impact that that one of my colleagues came up and shared with me how she noticed my change and wanted to know how she could learn what I was learning. And, you know, and that led to meeting with 8 mental health professionals once a week for 2 years in that center. So the minute you share as you share more of your insight and your realizations and you live in that, it's attractive. People want to know more. Your clients will want to know more. And so will the people around you. And that's what started to happen for me. My colleagues noticed the difference and then asked about it, and more and more of them were attracted. And from there, from our work together, a few of my colleagues started a 3 principles program in depression. Another psychiatrist started a women's group on the principles. So it just started to flourish just by my living in the understanding with my colleagues. But as I shared hourly with my clients or with my groups, my clients wanted to know more. So one of the things about this and sharing with you today is to really help you feel comfortable with you just sharing your insights. Don't try to be like anybody else, or don't think that you have less to share than any other person you may have seen or heard on webinars or seen on 3 Principles movies or anything else. The minute you drop into the state of your understanding, you are in that spiritual energy, and it is wide open. It is infinite. So the minute you move into trying to get to your place in you, where you've had this insight or realization, at that moment you're flourishing spiritually, because it's infinite. Whatever more you're going to say from there will just occur to you. You'll just be more expansive. You will see more and more and more. Sheila, did you have anything to ask about that?
No, I don't think I've got anything to ask. I was just sitting here thinking, in some ways it feels, I've heard that said lots of times before, and it just feels so simple, and that to me is always a bit of a stumbling block in terms of, we think it's so simple. I'll speak for me. I think it's so simple, it's overlooked. You know, that only share what you know, kind of with that. What you know is more than enough. I love that you've shared that, Mark. Thank you.
I want to share another piece to that too, before going on to maybe the next point. I want to leave a lot of room to hear from people because I love to be interactive with people. But you see, here's the beauty of what you've been touched by, those of you here today. And that is that...
I'm just going upstairs, Adrian.
That when you have had an insight, the insight will take over for you. And here, I want to just tell you my story about that, but here's what I mean by it. I had a very deep realization. Wait, I want to try to see if we can mute this person. I can't really see if we can. I can't do it, but...
see if I can.
There's somebody on the telephone that needs
the telephone,
yeah. But here's what I mean by that, in the sense that it really is simple, and I want to point to you to the simplicity of it. Once you get to that place in you, the feeling for your insight. So I had this really deep realization that at that evening that emotions and feelings are just made up, and that thought creates feeling. And when I went back to the clinic the next day to share it with clients, just being in that insight, I saw that nothing else that I was doing before was useful. It wasn't like I had to stop getting involved with other approaches to helping people. It just, from that insight, it just made sense that all I needed to do was tell people about this insight. So it's not very, in a way, complicated, because there's so much going for you the minute you drop into the feeling of your particular realization when you share that with people. What gets complicated is our own personal thinking about going about sharing our insights, and that's where it gets complicated, because people get kind of insecure thoughts about it, or they think about themselves in terms of how am I doing in sharing these principles, or things like that. And that's what makes it seem like a complicated piece to it. But it's always about whenever you're with clients as a three principles facilitator, it's always about, if you get kind of lost or caught up in your own thinking, it's always coming back to, well, what have I seen? What am I trying to convey here? What's my point? What do I want people to see of what I have seen? And once you get back to that feeling, once again, you're in that spiritual energy. And in that energy, it is what will take care of you as you share what you've seen. So I hope that was helpful.
All right, everything's okay.
I hope that was helpful to people. But that's where you flourish. Where you flourish is in your understanding and your insights. You live in there. You just keep an eye there. And when you're called on to share, you go bring yourself back into that insight and talk to people from the inside, and try to really be in the feeling for it. So when people early on asked me, well, what did I see? I took a moment to get to the feeling of it, of what I had seen, and then I share with my colleague, well, I just saw that, in psychology, I'm talking to my colleague, in psychology, we give emotions a life of their own, but I just realized that we just make them up. They're like an illusion. They're like a mirage. They're not real, except for the fact that they look real to us. And then we just started talking from there, and I saw a little more about how I could help her understand my insight. So that's what you're doing when you share. You're helping people understand what you've realized. That's all it is helping them understand what you've realized. And as you talk about it with people, and you're in the ease of that, the comfort of that, more comes to you. So Sydney Banks always said, you know, if you keep it's like a full bottle of wine. If you don't pour out the wine, you can't pour more wine into the bottle. And he always said that from his own experiences too, you know, he was really he was new to sharing. He didn't ever share spiritual knowledge ever in his life, you know. And what he learned was the more you share, the more comes to you. But really, just look at it that you're just trying to help people understand your insight into these principles. You don't have to share all three principles. You don't have to talk about any principles. You start with your insight, and as you stay in that spiritual energy, you'll just see more. So it's simple in that way, but believe me, in my years, I've learned how much I complicate it. And, you know, I myself create obstacles, you know, and so we're human, and that'll happen. But I have found that if you bring yourself back to what's my insight? What do I want people to see here? What is it that I've seen? If you come back to that, you can regroup around that and start off again. So that you've had these realizations for yourself and insights, they're a nice foundation for you. And if you get out there and you're just really lost in sharing, you know, just come back to that. That'll regroup you. It'll get you back into the feeling of this energy, and that will help you out. So that's how you flourish there. There's a never-ending amount of knowledge for you available. And the more you share, the more you will flourish in that, the more you will see.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Really, the point of flourishing yourself and sharing that with other people, it's gorgeous. I really got lost in the feeling then. Would you like to move on to our next point, keeping you on track?
Yes, and you ask questions about it too. You know, yes, let's do that again. You know, for those of you new to the call, before I started in terms of talking about flourishing here today, spiritually and then practically. So we're talking about flourishing spiritually with these first 2 points.
Brilliant. And just to make the point, I think I didn't say earlier on, and I think it's important that if people I see some messages have come in, but if people have got questions, Mark's going to take questions later. If you've got any, please type them into the chat box or save them up and you can speak directly to Mark later. Either way is fine. I can see a couple of questions have come in. Okay, great. So for later, I've got a couple of questions already, which is great. So would you like to continue? Yeah.
Sure. I'm looking at the time, and again, this was. I really want to leave time to hear people, so I'm going to move a little. Try to just make a few brief points without losing the feeling for the next couple of points. You know, the listening piece in terms of spiritual flourishing, and then how to practically flourish. I just wanted to share with you about this listening piece, because for me, what I've called listening, for you, all of you that have heard me before, it's not listening with your ears, you know. It's not listening to words or the content. It's really getting into a presence. And I think on an audio I did, and what I did for the 3PG conference, 3PGC conference, was listening beyond yourself. And you really can find a consciousness when you're with your clients or with a group making a presentation to share from your work with the principles. You can get into a consciousness where you feel the deep connection you have to the human beings that you're helping or sharing, either your client or your group. And that state of consciousness is a feeling of, just this deep feeling of love and understanding. You, in that moment of this consciousness of what I call listening, you don't know, you don't see, you don't think of yourself. There's no sense of you being there. What I mean by that, again, is that you're not paying attention to your opinions about the group or your clients or your judgments. You're not paying attention to your own thoughts about yourself or about what you need to do later in the day. These come up, of course, they've come up all the time in sessions, but you're not giving them any life. So you're in a conscious state, and the best I can describe it is you don't have a sense of yourself being there. You're there, of course, but you're in a deeper level of consciousness where you're not phased out. You're like I am right now. I'm talking, and I'm alive. I'm not like just in this meditative state, but my listening is deep. And what you're really looking for is to try to connect to the humanness of the people you're helping or sharing the principles to, either an individual client or a group or a couple or a family or other people you're coaching. Whatever it is of the work you're doing, you're trying to really hear their humanity. And in this state, you're trusting and you're having faith that when you connect to these people, to your clients, when you connect through rapport, that the intelligence that you both are connected to, because everybody is a part of mind. So another way of looking at this, when you get to this feeling of consciousness, it's really to the connection all of you have to mind. Right now on this webinar, all of us are connected to mind. So we have available to us the intelligence that's behind life right now. And I'm doing my best to let it guide me. But that's what you're looking for. That's what you're listening for in what I call listening, is to just let this intelligence, the wisdom we call it, guide us in our sessions with clients. And that's why you want to be in this conscious state, these deep feelings of just connection, of love and understanding. And so when you're in that state, you're just a flourishing energy. This energy is just, again, infinite around helping you really know how to share what you know in a way that's right for your clients in that moment. It really does that for you. And that's the spiritual power you have going for you when you listen in this manner. I just wanted to remind people, if you could just mute yourselves, please.
I'm manually muting some people, but for some reason, some I can't.
There's just a lot of people on the call. So this listening is a very, very beautiful place to be. And again, for people who are new to being a Three Principles facilitator, it looks like it takes some faith, because it's really, you're not really, it doesn't feel like you're in the driver's seat, but your mind, so in a way you are in the driver's seat, but it's not like Mark Howard himself is creating a way to share the principles with impact. But my being this intelligence is helping me create that. So what you have going for you every time you're with clients, when you get to this place of listening, is this infinite source of intelligence that will actually guide you to share your insights in a way that's helpful to this person. And how you've listened to the humanity of your client helps that wisdom become more relevant for you. So I often talk about it like you want to listen with curiosity about how this person is presenting their life to you. Or you might listen to it with wondering about how they can, how can they look at life this way given the principles. So given the principles, what are they missing? So you wonder about that with them, and you kind of go on a journey to try to get a sense of how they're putting their world together so that you know how you might be able to share your understanding of the principles. So for example, I have a young man that I'm seeing who is very, very anxious, very anxious. And when he goes to restaurants with his girlfriend, he gets a thought that somebody's drugged his food and he can't eat. And even if he's overcome that thought, if he leaves the restaurant and his stomach gets a bit upset, he then starts thinking somebody put something in his food. See? So if I'm sitting there listening to that, I get curious about what's that about? And I start to go on a journey with him around that. Like, well, geez, when did you start thinking about that? What's it like for you to think about it that way? And I just keep going until I start to get something that occurs to me about, what to say around the principles. So something that occurred to me in one of the sessions was to ask him, well, did you ever think that that's just being created through your thinking? And so here we go. We're off and running now into trying to help him see how thought creates that experience. So that's all. People present to you all kinds of ways that thought has formed for them. And if you get curious about it with them, if you wonder about how that can be for them, if you get puzzled about it, that kind of is your lead to go on a journey that will allow your connection to mind and the client's connection to mind. Both of you are connected deeply in that time that you are together. Well, you're connected no matter what, but in that time together. And the intelligence that's there will actually guide you. So you will flourish in there. You will flourish. Now, when I start thinking about me, Mark Howard, coming up with something, my flourishing really narrows down. I don't have many options, but when I'm listening from this place, my options are infinite about how I might intervene with this person or what I would say, how I would talk to them. So it's a beautiful energy that we are a part of, because once we really get into that state of letting that energy guide us, we're really assisted. And it could be simple. It could be simple. It could be just something like, well, check in now and see if what you're saying makes sense. Or, stop talking right now and check in with people. Make your connection isn't as deep as it was before. Or it might be something like helping like a couple see that they really are connected to love and understanding. And that it's only their thoughts about one another that make it look like they're no longer in love with one another. That's a pretty deep area to go to. So, but the beautiful thing about this listening piece, it's not up to you. You don't have to think about all of this. You as the principles can really come up with something that can really help your clients. And you won't know it beforehand. It'll just occur to you. But if you keep looking for that and get yourself into that conscious state, you again will flourish with what options are available to you to share with your clients. So I just wanted to talk a little bit to that area.
Great. Do you want me to, bearing in mind the time, Mark, do you want me to ask you, because a question came to mind easily for me just now that I would like to ask you? Or do you want to continue?
What do you think? Because I still wanted to give people some practical points.
Okay, you carry on then. Carry on.
Okay. So again, just briefly today, we've covered two areas of understanding that can allow for spiritual flourishing. And what I have seen in my colleagues who have started with me in the early days, that's where they flourish spiritually. They stay true to what they have seen and continually make sure that they're speaking from what's true for them today. All the time, that's always where they're coming from. And they're getting their own personal thinking out of the way to listen deeply and stay and be guided by this intelligence. There's other ways we can talk about spiritual flourishing, and we can, that's part of where my heart is for this retreat we'll talk with you about. But I just wanted to give you these 2 points spiritually, because if you look at any of the colleagues and your own colleagues, when they're really impactful, that's where they're flourishing spiritually. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a couple of practical ideas about flourishing as just having a practice that flourishes. And this is just my idea, okay? I don't know if other 3 principles practitioners think about it the same way I do that have come through the years with me. So take it as just me. But I think there's been kind of an underlying myth that I don't know how much people see about this, but around marketing your business, marketing your 3 principles, facilitator practice, whatever it is. And there was something there's something I think implied that, if you're talking about something spiritual, marketing doesn't seem to fit in there. So I want to make some practical points about that, because what I've seen, and Sheila can add something too, but what I have seen, and the way to look at that is around your own visibility to the world and your own credibility to the world. For example, if people didn't know you had something to offer, how would the world get your insights? If people had no sense of you being around, that you had this wonderful insight and realization about how life works, how could you help people? So what I look at when I look at marketing, it's around being visible, increasing your visibility and your credibility to people. And I think practically you can do that in 2 ways. I think right now, if you like getting out in your community, you could do something right now that could start to let people know about you. One of the things I've done all through my career has been to give talks. And so I'll go to professional organizations in my community or charitable organizations in my community, business organizations in my community, and give talks on certain topics that when I give my talk, I will talk about some of the principles. So that's one way that I really am comfortable with, and it has let people in my community know that I'm around. Another way is that I go out in my community and invite people that have, to me, heartfelt businesses to coffees or to lunch, just to start talking to them about our businesses. So it's just letting people know about me. So I'm just giving you some practical things, very briefly, some practical things, again, because I want to make room to really hear from everybody. Mm-hmm. So that's in the community. There's many, many ways that you can become visible in your community. And then I just wanted to give you an example of something that's been very powerful for me over the internet. So I had kind of talked with my business coach about this, and she was talking about, like, people have newsletters, people have blogs, people have webinars, and so we came up with the idea of these teleseminars. And so I offer a teleseminar that is free over the internet, and it's an hour teleseminar once a month. And I just choose a topic, and that's moving me that month. And again, each one is focused on the principles. But it's really increased my visibility. We started with 20 people registering for the first one, and we now have 400 people who have signed up. But here's the remarkable, surprising thing for me. As I've been doing the teleseminars now a year and a half, I've gone to several of the principals conferences, and people will come up to me that I've not met, I've not talked to, who say, I've been on your teleseminar and I love it. It's really helped me. And I'm so thankful that you're doing them. I mean, a number of people have come up to me. And so I start a conversation with people. I get connected with more people than I have ever known before, across the world that have traveled to these conferences and come up to me and are thankful that I do the teleseminars and introduce themselves to me. So for me, the thinking around being able to flourish in your particular business, whether it's a principal's coaching, or a principal's body work, or mental health person, or an addictions person, whatever it is, there are some practical things to flourish as a business so you can sustain your work. That's what I want for you, and I think Sheila does too, in my heart, because you see, what you have seen is unique to you, and humanity needs you. Sydney Banks one time was talking to us, a small group of us, and we were kind of talking about being jealous about, well, look, if so-and-so gets so much business, there won't be any left for me. And he says, oh my God, how many millions of people are in the world? If people really caught on to this in the world, the 8 of you wouldn't be able to handle it all, So
8.
There were just 8 of us at the time, And he says, don't ever look at it that way. Be happy for your colleagues, but keep your way alive. And that's what I want for everybody on the call, is that we can talk about not only the spiritual way to flourish, because when you flourish spiritually, that energy attracts people too. It will attract people. But you can do some things practically that will allow you to sustain your business. And these are a couple of ways that I have used that allow people to know me and know about me. And once they get to know me, they love what I talk about, and they love where I'm coming from, because again, I listen deeply to them, and they start to share this with their friends or family or other people. And so again, the point where I'm coming from is, if you can sustain your message, it will help humanity, and I want to help that. I think, Sheila, you had something too to add here in this piece of marketing.
Yeah, well, what came to me straight away was I find it refreshing and surprising. The first time you told me you had a business coach, I just was like, really? This season 3 principal teacher has a business coach. It's like, I'd never heard of that when I first came across the principles. It was like, ooh, you don't do that. That's outside in, that's looking for something out there. So I found it so refreshing when you first told me that you had a business coach. I was like, yay. That for me was a biggie. But I think the piece that I wanted to share more than anything was in terms of marketing. I see marketing as being relationship building. It's really for me, that's all it boils down to. So I also think that goes hand in hand. It just runs so tightly, so nicely with the three principles, you know, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about us being connected. We're talking about life, you know, as a whole. And if we're reaching out and connecting with people and building relationships with people, you know, we're sort of, we're living the principles. We're always living the principles. But I think that marketing's got such a bad name in terms of what you do to somebody. You're just chucking stuff at them and you're trying to convince them of something and all that yucky stuff that people don't really want to be doing. They don't want to be seen as the car salesman. Forgive me if there are any car salesmen on the line, but you know, that stereotypical car salesman. It doesn't have to be like that at all. It's like, I see it as a bridge. We're bridge building in terms of marketing and connecting with people. It's like Mark was saying earlier on, you know, if you've got this wonderful message to share with people, but they don't know about you, it's like we've got to build that bridge. It's like seeing somebody, I don't know, we're on this side of the river and they're on the other side of the river, and we can see them on the other side of the river struggling. And we know that we can help them on this side of the river, but they don't know about us yet. So we've got to build some sort of a bridge to help them go. You know, it could be that we walk over the bridge, meet them on the side. It could be that they see the bridge and they start walking towards us. But it's our responsibility in a way to be building that bridge, because we know something that can really, really help them. And that's the way I see it. I see the marketing is just bridge building. It's nothing else but that. And we've all got our different styles. I mean, Mark's been sharing some methods, some strategies, some tools that he uses that work for him. And there's tons and tons, as you all know, I'm sure, out there to choose from, whether it's online or offline. And for me, there are no, you know, 10-step formulas, magic formulas that make this happen. It's individual to each of us. We've all got our own, as we know, wisdom that we're guided by, minute by minute of every day. So it's about, just as Mark was saying earlier on as well, about being consciously aware of deep listening to ourselves, deep listening to what's going on for us, so that we can hear what the next step is, which way to go. And that doesn't mean that we don't look outside and what's working for somebody else and ask, you know, why reinvent the wheel? If something's working for somebody else, we can have a go at it or not. That doesn't feel right. I mean, I have clients that say, I'm not doing newsletters, or, you know, I don't know how to do Twitter. I don't want to do Twitter. And I'm like, well, fine, you know, yeah, but my last coach said I had to do it. And it's like, no, you don't. You get to choose. It's your business. It's your practice. It's your life. And you've got your own wisdom. Your wisdom trumps everything, every single time. So really, I think that's sort of the point I wanted to make, is that, number one, marketing is about relationship building bridges, connecting with people, just having a relationship, just doing what you do best anyway, you know, connecting with people. That's all it takes, really. And it's one conversation at a time. And then looking, if you love talking to people, you go do talks. If you don't like that, you're a bit of an introvert, that's fine. You can sit online and do webinars or whatever takes your fancy. And number two was really, it's about you, and it's following your wisdom, really. And number three, actually, what came to me when Mark was talking is, we don't know what the big picture is. We have no idea. And I could tell you loads of stories about things that I've done thinking it was going to go a certain way. You know, oh, this is going to bring me that client, or this is going to make me this amount of money. And it's been completely the opposite direction. It's like, how did that happen? I mean, simple things as having a new client via the very fact that I've asked, he doesn't even know this, the very fact that I invited Mark to come to a retreat. Somebody saw that I was doing that, reached out to me, and now she's become a client. Now, I did not see that coming. It was just, I heard Mark speak in England last year, and I was so touched by what he was saying. I was straight in the coffee break, I was straight over to him. I'd love you to come to Spain. Will you come over to Spain and do some teaching? You know, we just don't know. It's just putting one foot in front of the other and not worrying. I think it's just not worrying about where this is going and what's it going to bring me and all that stuff that we can get caught up in. So again, I'm being mindful of the time. So what did you have anything else you wanted to say, Mark, before we kick into talking about the retreat a little bit?
Yes, I did. I think that one of the beautiful things of people on this call that have want to be and are three principles facilitators is that it is this energy that you get into when you meet people in your community or online, however it is that you're doing it. It's attractive. People want more. I can tell you how many times I've met a business owner, we've had a coffee, and we start talking, and I'm in that feeling of listening to them, and they want to know more. Yeah, look, the spiritual energy of the principles is attractive. And the reason I know I needed guidance in how to build the business is because I have not had the level of consciousness that Sydney Banks lived in. Sydney Banks lived in such a high level of consciousness. I don't know anybody who here on the call who's living at that level, that he didn't have to market in any way. The energy was so powerful. Mind you, it is there. It's powerful that it drew people from all over the world. There were stories Sydney Banks would talk about with us that people came to him and didn't even know why they were coming to Salt Spring Island. It was just this powerful, they got a powerful urge to go to Salt Spring Island. So there is something about the nature of our spiritual energy that we just have touched. And I haven't touched it at the level where, I could just sit and hundreds of people just show up at my doorstep, But magical things have happened. Magical things have happened around just beginning to get your voice out there. So that's another way of looking at it. Getting you out there because the world needs your voice. Anyhow, so it's been wonderful to have the opportunity to share this with you today. And, it was very brief, really brief. I mean, each area, there's so much more to go into with everyone. But I just wanted to have a time to just share with you a few points and hope they were helpful. So I think we should go and hear from people.
Okay. I thought you wanted to talk about the retreat just somewhat. I thought you wanted to share your thoughts about the retreat a little bit, Mark, before we went ahead for questions, but we can change it around.
Well, we're getting late here. I want to really give people room because you're expecting to ask questions. But I just want you to know that my heart, when you asked me to come over and we started talking about this, it opened up my heart. And I really wanted to deepen for everybody, first of all, the deeper feelings that we have within us. I've been listening to Sydney Banks, and he said there's deeper feelings than we can even imagine. And I want us to have a special time together to look at that with each other and go deeper. In my time of sharing the principles, there have been a lot of obstacles that I've seen that get in the way that kind of get in the way of people's teaching. And I want to highlight that and help people, teach deeper than that, to really see what they are and avoid them. And I just want people to really get comfortable with sharing what they know and giving ourselves time to really discover more. But it's really heartfelt. And I think if you look at how we've shared it with you, you could see that both of us, Sheila and I, are really coming from our heart, wanting the best for you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, so we'll open the floor up for questions then. I'll have, first of all, Sebastian, who has a question regarding wisdom. So I guess I'm going to have to go and look for Sebastian. And can you unmute yourself, Sebastian? Or
yeah,
oh,
here
great.
I am.
There you go.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, hi, Sebastian.
My question is about wisdom related to the time before we had our first insights about the three principles, because it's been now 2 years since I had my first insight, and at the start I just had this one big insight about how thought creates my feelings. But now looking back, I've seen a lot of times when, for example, I was anorexic, where I've seen the principles in action. Not that I realized it as the principles, but I've seen that something from the outside does not make me happy, for example. And what do you think about sharing some insights or wisdom that was before you even knew the principles or had this big realization?
Well, that's beautiful, because I think that, what you speak to is that from, day one in our lives, we are guided by wisdom. And, and it's trying to assist us our whole lives. And it has for you, like you said, even beforehand, you saw that going about it this way is not where I'm going to find my happiness, and yet, there wasn't anything to really do more with that, and I've seen it through my lifetime. I just think that what happened for me when I heard the principles is that, I don't know, something deeper opened up. I don't know, we have a saying of, I had something to hang my hat on, like even when I had guidance earlier in my life, from wisdom, I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know to pay attention to it. It was just, like, oh man, that made sense, but I didn't know that's what I followed. Like, I had wisdom come up that gave me a lot of love in my life, love in my marriage. I had deep love in my marriage before the principles, but then I would live in a lot of bother too. I would live in a lot of bother. So when the love showed up, or the understanding from my wife showed up, some wise thing showed up, like, well, geez, she's just stressed out. Take it easy. Just calm. That was wisdom. I didn't know that I should just follow that. Right? So I would pay attention to my bother once again. I didn't know not to do that. So when I had insights into the principles, it helped me. It helped me see where to look. It was a stronger guide about. And I woke up like you. I saw that thought created this experience I was in. And that really helped me see that I could choose where to look. See? But there's a wonderful, I don't think it's available anymore, but we had the principles in a women's recovery center. And this woman came into the class. She was in the 30-day program, and she had this great insight when in her second meeting, and she said, now I see what my wisdom was. She now saw it, what it was. You see, it put something there that she could make sense of. But she told about how when she was out on the streets 30 years as a heroin addict. But she said there were nights when her wisdom would tell her, don't go into that dealer. Don't go to that dealer. Don't go late. Don't go sleep there. She just didn't know to follow that. Does that help?
Yep. Beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you for that question. That's a beautiful question.
One thing, what I heard was that behind the inside of the three principles, there's a deeper feeling, in a way. Is this right, or?
Well, you are the spiritual energy that is mind, thought, and consciousness. So there's nothing deeper than that, behind that. You are that energy. And that energy forms in a feeling. There's a there's a feeling of that. And what I mean by deeper feelings is that there's more to discover. There's more to see about the spiritual energy. There's more to see about thought. There's more to see about mind. And in there are feelings that are deeper than we've even imagined yet. That's all I meant.
Okay.
But they're not separate from the spiritual energy of the principles. In fact, we know hardly anything about thought. So you want to see that there's so much more to see. And as you stay open to that and you see more, your feelings deepen. That's what I meant. We should go on to another question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
At the moment, Mark, nobody's putting their hand up and nobody's typing me any more questions. So everybody's fine. Oh, look. Go ahead, Steph. Unmute yourself. If you can. Can you?
Yeah, there we go.
Great, thanks.
Hi, thanks, guys. It's an absolutely fascinating discussion. I'm really, really enjoying it. And it's less a question, more of an observation, I guess, around marketing in as much as it seems to me that I think people have been put off the idea of marketing because there's been a lot of, recently, over the last few years, there's been a lot of fear-based marketing. So people are putting ideas into people's heads that, you should fear this. If you don't do this, this is where you'll end up. We've got the solution. And the way especially the way you both put it so beautifully, it's about relationship building. It's about creating a connection with people, which another way that Mark was saying, it's for me, it feels like we're marketing by being in the feeling rather than in a fear-based marketing. It's feeling, connection-based. It's universal energy-based. It's positive. It's love and compassion-based. And I think for me that really cleans it up. I think I can recognise a communication that's coming from a heart-centered place and something that's coming from a fear-based place. So that was just my observation. I thought what you both said, you put it so beautifully. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's beautiful. I love what you said, because you don't want anybody in fear. Fear, it's ridiculous to have anybody in fear. And if you see that whoever you're meeting to talk about what you do is connected to you, you're the same. You just look different. And that they want that same thing. That's what people want. They want what you have, what you've been able to see. Well, you don't have any right to scare them into getting it. It's like, it doesn't even make sense. That's what Sheila was talking about. Your wisdom will guide you. This is all about, it's all about helping people to wake up knowledge that they already have. So all you're about is trying to connect with people and letting them know what it is that you do, and would that help them? Would it be of help to them? Yeah, but that was beautifully said. I'm just kind of adding on to it.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you. Andreas, is it Andreas? Would you like to unmute yourself? Save me the job. Thank you.
Welcome. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Hi, Mark, and hi, everyone. My question is about the power of the feeling.
Yeah.
I had the fortune to talk to Elsie Spittle yesterday, and we had a really beautiful conversation. And what stuck with me was that that there was my question is actually about insights, and that there's when you have a really deep connection with somebody during the conversation, that you can really impact somebody on a really deep level, and it's not really in insight that occurs, but more of a feeling in the body. So it's not really. So it's like that you can really feel it in your body, but it's not a conscious insight, but something has impacted you and transformed you. And Mark, I would love I would love it if you would comment on that, and what your experience is about that. And yeah, and also I would like to talk with you more about being yourself. So if you are yourself, and if you really live the principles, then people open up and they get curious. And how how do you how do you broadcast this to your closest friends and families? Was it more difficult for you to share it with them, or how did you communicate it, this new understanding, to your closest friends and family?
Well, geez, that's so let's go back to the feeling first, and then we'll talk about connecting with other people with it. But yeah, it is really that deep feeling of connection that people feel. When I talked about the listening piece today, it's really in that deep feeling with someone, And when you sit as a facilitator, you sit in your knowing the feeling of this. You sit in love and understanding for that group, or that, or that individual client. That's the impact. That's really the impact. That's where people get drawn to you. That's where your teaching moves from a rap, just an intellectual exercise, to meaningfulness. And it's coming from your state of consciousness. You see, it's coming from you dropping into that feeling in you. And I call it love and understanding, right? And you're right. You can talk with a human being there. You just talk. You just talk from that feeling with people, and it impacts them. It really does. It brings them to that level. It does. It does. You're right about the power of this. That's the spiritual energy. That's the spiritual energy. Sydney Banks always said it's love and understanding. And it is. It really is love and understanding, but not from the outside love and understanding, but truly just being in that state. And that has impact. That has impact already. Now, the one other piece here is that feeling can have impact on your client and bring them their own personal insights without you having to say anything. Okay, it can. It's that impactful. But as a facilitator, you always want to make sure, you always want to check out if they know where their experience is coming from. See, that's what we have to offer people. Because if people know where their experience is coming from, they can take care of themselves the rest of their lives. See, they don't need you. See? So, but you kind of monitor that as you go along with your clients. You monitor that. But the feeling of you, your feeling of sitting in the understanding you have is what is impactful. And people will feel that. They will be drawn to that. That's true. And so you die. That's where you talk. See, that's where you talk. You talk in that feeling. But you also want to make sure that they know where their experience is coming from. See? That's what helps them. In the early days, 1982, there were just a handful of us, and we didn't really have the full principles then. And we would just get people into the feeling. Well, what would happen is people would make up why they're feeling that way when they left us. They would make it up. They would say, oh, I've got to go read more of the Bible. Or, oh, I've got to go read some other author. Or some people got into crystals. So it's an innocent thing because people go outside until they know it's coming from within through the power of thought, see? So I just wanted to add that little piece. That's all. I don't mean anything except you're right about the feeling. You want to live in that feeling with your clients because that's what's impactful. But remember, you want to also share with them your insight. If they can see where their experience comes from, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. Okay, the other piece. So again, I'm really brief with these answers because of the time. I want to just make room for one more question, okay? But there's a lot more I can say on this. That's what the retreat is for. Us delving into this together and gaining more insights. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. You don't want to tell anybody in your family or your colleagues what they should know about the principles. What I found is if you live the understanding, they will talk to you. They will want to know. So that's a general point because, again, with my colleagues, I went from a person in the clinic that would challenge my colleagues. At staff meetings, I would challenge them to a person who sat there with pure understanding for them. So when I had this realization, and I went back to the clinic, I started to see them with understanding. So I no longer challenge them. I saw they're trying to do their best too, trying to help people. So I just want to be of support to them. Well, I lived in that. See, I lived in that understanding. I was at a different level of consciousness. So that's why one of my colleagues came up to me. She said, like, what have you been learning? You're a completely different person. So then I could talk to them. But not everybody liked it. There were, it was like 30 colleagues. Not everybody liked it, but 8 colleagues met with me for 2 years. And but the people in the clinic knew something was going on because they called us the God Squad. They said, oh, when we left our meeting, they would say, oh, there goes the God Squad. See, they knew something was there. With my family, it's been living in the understanding, and the understanding has helped me. So it's told me through the wisdom how to talk to my wife. My son was 2 years old when I started to listen to Sydney Banks and be taught by him. So he grew up in it. He just grew up in it, and us living from that understanding and us talking from that understanding. And it told me, this wisdom told me how to be with my wife in a relationship. It told me to tell her that I was changing, you know. It helped me kind of talk about it, and she saw that I was a different person. And then, you know, she came to Sydney Bank seminars with me. And so as my son grew up, he started to come to Sydney Bank seminars with me. With other family members and friends, you know, I just lived it. I just lived it, you know. And so one night, I wasn't really talking about the principles with family, outside family, my sisters and all of that, and friends. But one night in a family meeting, one of my sisters said, "Well, Mark, why don't you ever talk about what you're learning? Because, man, you've been just really a changed person, you know, all the families around." So I said, "Well, you know, I just didn't know if you wanted to hear anything." So we talked a bit. The whole family talked about it a bit. And as I've been giving my own public events in our community here, where most of my family lives, some of my family and friends have come to those events. And it's been really wonderful to see, like my niece, who's kind of been an angry woman and having difficulty at work, came to a recent event I gave on the principles. And we were out together for dinner, and she shared with me how it's helped her change, how she's been able to have more understanding for people and be less angry. But I didn't really take it on to tell people. Just with my wife and son, and so I don't know. I mean, people can do different things with it, you know. I mean, but that's how I've gone about it. But I think you want to be careful if you're going to share something with people close to you, that you're not doing it out of ego, but you're doing it out of the spirit of your understanding and really honoring their humanness. Because I've seen it at times where people are really doing it so that their spouse can get better. And you never want to do it from that. Believe me. I hope that's been helpful to you. Those were really great questions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mark, and your response was truly great, and thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so anybody else? Well, let's do a last minute, one more question.
Looking for hands going up. No hands going up. No chat box messages. None at the moment, Mark. I'm happy to ask one.
Go ahead. That would be great.
Okay. Well, what came to me? Oh, wait a minute. Somebody's asking a question. Chat. Okay. So from Henk, just out of curiosity, how did you tell? I think it says tell the level of Sid. Oh yeah, tell. Thank you. Sid's consciousness.
Oh, hi, Hank.
Mm-hmm.
How did I tell?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know, but he could talk he could talk spiritually, and I think if you listen to him, you have no doubt that he is seeing something spiritually that I don't have a clue to, you know. So I'm thinking, well, you know, his consciousness is higher than mine because I don't see that. You know, I could get a feel a bit for it, but I've got a ways to go. So there's that. I mean, whenever I've been around him, when he would talk from being in that space that I've talked with you about being in, what he had shared, I mean, for me, is like, what? I can't get my head around it. So I know he's at a higher level than me. And the reason I've been able to see more of it is that I kept listening to him and kept listening and reading his books and kept listening, and I kept teaching. I think one of the blessed things for me in my life to see more, this is the flourishing, is that I have this opportunity to teach daily. And I've been called on to go deeper and deeper and find more. And so that's how I've learned more. But he would tell stories. So I'll tell you one story. So we were all again gathered, and he would tell the story about, when he first had these insights, after he stopped working his usual job, he started to talk on Friday nights. And he just was given this space in a church to talk, not because of the religion, but just a space to talk. And one night, these 4 fishermen came in, and they told the story that they were out fishing. And there's waters all around Salt Spring Island. I don't know what they call those waters. But anyhow, they were out fishing. They were drawn to dock their boat at Salt Spring Island. They were drawn to get off the boat and go to this church. They had no sense of why. They just felt compelled. They went to the church. They heard Sydney Banks speak. All 4 of them came up and had tears in their eyes and have said, "This is why we were told to come here. We are home." So, my God, I know, look, this person has seen something at such levels of consciousness that it's not Sydney Banks. It's the level of consciousness he was blessed to have seen and teach from. See, it's that energy. It's not him. It's that energy from which he spoke. Now, I hope this is answering your question, Hank. I know in comparison that I could talk right now outside my front door and nobody's driving by would stop. I'm making a joke of this. I'm making a joke. No one would stop, really, But I've had people, like Sheila talks about, I've had people that I've talked on webinars and so forth come forth to me. So anyhow, those 2 things, that's what I've noticed that have shared with me that he's at a higher level. He sees something about life that I don't know yet. I know it's in me. There's the knowledge that he has is in all of us. It's in all of us. We've been blessed to have heard a little bit of it and have some of that awaken in us. But there's so much more. There's so much more. And when I hear him, I have this hope that I could see more. So anyhow, those 2 things that I've shared with you are why I think he's at a higher level than me. Or that's how I see his level of that's how I see it. That's what I'm calling levels of consciousness and him at a higher level.
Was that helpful, Hank?
Oh.
Yeah.
That was just sheer beautiful.
Yeah, I love the story of Sid Banks and the fisherman. I've never heard that one before. Thank you. I think people are always curious to hear about stories of Sid since we can't hear him anymore. So it's lovely to hear the stories from people who are around him. For me.
I know. They really are, and I, will love to share the stories I've heard, because when I hear the stories, my certainty it just deepens that there's something here. I don't quite see it yet completely, but there's more to see, and it's a powerful energy that we've just kind of got glimpses of. And it's healed our lives, you know.
Mm.
Just the glimpses has kind of healed our lives.
Mm. I love that you point out that they're just glimpses. That means there's so much more, isn't there? I think it's infinite.
It's infinite knowledge.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Well, this has been wonderful to be here with everybody.
Thank you. I've just been mindful of the time. I just check the chat box. Somebody's saying, okay. I think, okay, Morton sent a message. Thank you. Lots of love light bulbs turned on from Portugal. He said, somebody go to Mark's house and knock on his door. That's funny. That's great. Morton's gone, but he sent that. Thank you, Morton. So really just to wrap up, to say thank you to everybody for being here with us, and hope you've got lots out of this mini webinar. Great, thank you. As we were saying, it's a preview to the upcoming retreat in September. You've got the link to that. I'll be sending links out to everybody. But I just wanted to say, really, that Mark's doing the teaching pretty much all the time at the retreat, and I was so drawn to Mark and his genuine, loving energy. I hope that's come through on this call. And that's what he's going to be doing for us for 4 days, 3.5 days in Spain. Luxury retreat, all inclusive. Just come and be pampered and listen to Mark and learn for your flourishing, sustainable business. That's what we're looking at, and that's what we're wanting for everybody. So we'd love to have you there. If we don't, that's fine too. We won't take it personally one little bit. We were talking about that earlier as well, weren't we? Thank you again for being here. Sorry, go on, Mark.
Just that we're going to do this together. We're going to really flourish spiritually too,
Absolutely.
Really find more to get together that will allow us to have more impact and simplify our sharing of the principles. So I would love people to be there. It'd be wonderful. All right. So thank you so much for being here, and just love being able to be with all of you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a great night or day, wherever you happen to be.
Bye.
Bye for now.